Right. 5 February 2022. And today I want to quickly go into the topic for today, which is a look at Nelson Chamisa's trip to Tanzania last week. And Chamisa was there, I think, on the 28th of January. He traveled to Tanzania, where there was a convention for a political party called ACT. And ACT is the fourth biggest political party in Tanzania, according to the elections that were held in 2020. ACT, or the Alliance for Change and Transparency, had about 400,000, in fact, 300,000 votes out of a lot of votes. Chama Pinduzi, the biggest party in Tanzania, had 8 million votes, and Chadema had 4.7 million votes, followed by the Civic United Front, which had 1.2 million votes. So the party that Nelson Chamisa went to visit in Tanzania is insignificant and is a faction of the political party called Chadema. And so basically the visit by Chamisa was inconsequential. It was not a big party that he went to visit. It was not a significant party in Tanzania. In fact, it was like him visiting Ngarivume's political party. That's basically what the visit was about. But I exaggerate a little bit. When Chamisa always visits somewhere, it makes news because Chamisa is an interesting figure in Zimbabwean politics. And we all have to admit that Chamisa is an interesting figure in Zimbabwean politics. But he's got serious weaknesses. And his weaknesses are becoming clearer and clearer as we move towards the next elections in 2023. So today I want to unpack the weaknesses that Chamisa has got and why it is becoming more and more difficult for him to establish a path to State House. He's finding it very difficult to establish a path to State House. And every time he goes on stage, it becomes worse for him. So I want to show you a quick clip of what Chamisa said when he visited Tanzania. And I was very concerned because the crowd, they were not engaging with Chamisa. They felt, I felt almost as if he was losing the crowd. They did not understand what he was saying. The jokes that he normally tells in Zimbabwe were not basically getting to the crowd that was there. And I think Chamisa was doing well in 2018. But where we are now, he is in danger of becoming one of the politicians who were so close but did not get where they were supposed to go. So let's look at the speech. I took out a few clips from the speech that Chamisa gave, and I want us to quickly analyze why Chamisa is becoming less and less likely to win the 2023 elections because of the issues that are with his approach to politics. So firstly, his approach to politics, and secondly, his understanding of the situation. So let's see what Chamisa said in a few 2 minutes.
It's only in this continent where results are impregnated and produce a different child. It's only in Africa. We won the election. The problem in Africa is that the elders do not want to go to give the young ones the opportunity. Look at what is happening in Uganda. My brother, I'm 7. It's time to go. Leave young people to go forward. Yes, you have done very well, but you must be succeeded. No leader must stay forever. When you stay forever, you start stinking. You start becoming a burden. You start causing problems. Leaders come and leaders lead and leave. In Zimbabwe, we have had one man, President Mugabe, succeeding himself successively. Of course, we respect him for what he contributed, and may his soul rest in peace. In Africa, we honor our elders. He's our dear departed father. But we must all allow leaders to come and... Now, I have a big problem around elections in Africa. Elections in Africa are always contested. Do you know why? Registrar of parties. Because if you are not fair as a referee, you throw away the whistle, you join the other team. People begin to treat you with suspicion. That is what has caused problems on the African continent. You know that we go into elections, but elections produce contested results. Why? The rules are not agreed upon. In our own situation in Zimbabwe, I told you that we won elections. We are going to win again. Zimbabwe has elections next year. And I can tell you, we'll be inviting you to Zimbabwe. CCC is the next Zimbabwean government. Come, 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 come. It's a new dawn in Zimbabwe. There's a wave in the region. It was in Malawi. It went to Zambia. Now it's just peeping over, about to cross into Zimbabwe. And we are ready to welcome this. A great visitor called democracy. A great visitor called the election victory. Zimbabwe has been turned yellow. We now have a new kid on the block in Zimbabwe, the CCC, Citizens Coalition for Change. What is it about? We are saying the citizen, not the politician, must be the determining factor in politics.
Right. Very interesting. And I think there's a lot here that we can unpack from Nelson Chamisa's speeches. Firstly, I want to say Chamisa has got a big problem in terms of what happened in 2018. He keeps saying he won the election. Unfortunately, that's not true. And we are now almost just over a year towards the 2023 election. If I was Chamisa, I would stop that rhetoric of saying we won the 2018 election, because it definitely didn't happen. Chamisa did not win the 2018 election. Chamisa is not in office. And these things are clear to an audience like the one that he was speaking to there in Tanzania. It's clear to them. Tanzania has had so many problems. Apologies for my washing machine there, that is just finished. In Tanzania, they've had so many problems. And they understand the situation that Chamisa is in. So let me unpack it for you. Tanzania did not have, it was a one-party state until the late 80s. So there was only one political party since they had independence in 1961. In 1992, that's when a multi-party democracy was introduced in Tanzania. So they were not able to vote. They only had one political party. In 1994, they had their first elections. And since that election, the main political party there, Chamisa Mapinduzi, has been winning all elections. And I showed you the margin is astronomical. They don't win by these small margins of where Chamisa is said to have gotten 41% and President Mnangagwa has got 44%. That is not the margins. When Chamisa Mapinduzi wins, they get 8 million. And the party that Chamisa went to visit, ACT, was Alendo, they get 400,000 or 300,000 votes. So there's not even a contest. The next party, Chadema, where ACT came from, they get 4 million votes. So the margin there is very, very high. But elections in Tanzania are always contested. In fact, in 2000, when they had their second elections, 23 people were killed after the election. There's always a violence after the elections in Tanzania. So Tanzania has got a lot of problems. The people there in the audience, they understand what happens when people refuse to accept the outcome of results. And this is the problem that we have in Zimbabwe. The problem is that we have a situation where the opposition goes into election divided and prepared, and then when they lose the elections, they say they didn't lose. They blame ZEC, they blame the military, and so forth. Let me give you the example of the current situation. As we speak right now, voter registration is underway. Of course, for the by-election, it's no longer relevant. But for the 2023 elections is very relevant. My brother Zenzele Ndebele put out a tweet today. They were going around Bulawayo looking at people who are registering. Only 2 people, they found 2 people the whole day when they were going around registering to vote. That is in the city. So if you don't get new people registering, where do you expect to win? That means Chamisa is not going to win the elections because less people are going to register to vote. Unlike the situation in Zambia, what happened when Hakainde Hichilema won is that a lot of people voted, new people voted, a lot of young people. They convinced a lot of young people to come out and vote. So the problem is not ZEC. The problem is not the government of Zimbabwe. The problem is not the uneven playing field. The problem is the inability of Chamisa and other opposition party, firstly, to come together, and then secondly, to convince new voters to vote or to register to vote. In the 2018 elections, the vote that Thokozani Kupe had, if she had not split with Nelson Chamisa and they were together, they were going to force a runoff. And it was going to be one-on-one, Idi Mnangagwa against Nelson Chamisa. But because they were split, they were not able to force a runoff. Idi Mnangagwa won straight on the first round of voting. So the problem that we have in Zimbabwe, unlike what Chamisa is saying, is not ZEC. The problem that we have in Zimbabwe is the failure of the opposition to organize themselves, and the failure after an election is done to establish a path of dialogue. So remember, the issue of dialogue is very, very important, because you don't get reforms from a podium. You don't get reforms from making speeches. You get reforms when you sit down and you negotiate with the different parties, and then you have common interests and get a result. Let me give you an example from Tanzania, where Chamisa had gone. Zito Kabwe, the president of ACT, he is a very prominent member of the parliament, or he was a very prominent member of parliament up to 2015. In 2013, Zito Kabwe, as an opposition MP, he led negotiations and he led to the passing of what is called a mining act there in Tanzania. What the mining act did was to bring mining rights under locals. So because the Tanzanians were not getting value or access to their mineral wealth, Zito Kabwe, he brought this bill, and he's credited with that bill through negotiation. So he did negotiate with different members from different parties and ended up with this bill. The problem with Chamisa right now is he does not see the value of internal negotiations. So he would never negotiate internally. He would always give conditions before he negotiates. Whereas negotiation is basically, you have to take the interest of each person or every person until you win. But he does not get it. And he thinks that only the election or the ballot, that is where things happen. Unfortunately, that is not where it happens. The actual hard work is done outside of the elections. And this is where Chamisa is getting it wrong. So firstly, we said Chamisa is insisting that he won the elections when he didn't. The problems are not within the ZEC, they're not within the government of Zimbabwe, they're within the failure by Chamisa himself and his political parties and other opposition parties in Zimbabwe to organize themselves and to launch a proper campaign against ZANU-PF. They're always fighting. If you look at what is happening right now with Kupe, with Monzora, with Chamisa, those three will never work together. Even Jacob Ngaruvume, who was working with Chamisa, had to leave. And internally within the MDC or the CCC, they've got their own fights going on there. So the problem is not with the ZANU-PF, with the electoral bodies. Every country has got election issues. Look at the United States of America. The United States of America failed to hold an election that was acceptable to all parties. They are right now trying to change the laws in America because they're contesting the election. So contesting of election is not new. But remember what Joe Biden did. They won by getting out as many people as possible to vote. And I'm only saying this. If you get out as many people of yours from your side as possible, they will come out and you win. And this is what Chamisa is failing to do. And he keeps insisting that he won the election. And I say that he's insisting this in front of people who have known violence after every election. There's been violence in Tanzania after every election. And then we talk about the issue of dialogue. Chamisa does not understand the issue of dialogue. Internally in Zimbabwe, Chamisa has been the biggest stumbling block to progress in Zimbabwe. Ever since the 2018 election, Chamisa has stood in the way of dialogue. He has refused to go to Poland. He has refused to have dialogue even within the opposition parties. Right now, as we speak, Chamisa has refused when he was offered the chance to come and join other members of the opposition. When Monzora offered him a chance to contest in the MDC alliance or MDCT Congress, he refused. Right now, the CCC, a very disorganized political party, no constitution, no leadership structure, nothing. Fadzama had put out a statement today or yesterday saying that they're still working on those. You've got a political party like that, and you think you're going to win the election. It's not possible. So we have serious problems that were exposed by Chamisa's trip to Tanzania, and these problems are going to continue to mount as we move towards the 2023 elections, because Chamisa is making speeches, but the organization, the readiness is not there for the elections. And he keeps insisting that he won. I do not think that is going to do any good for the CCC, the new political party that they formed. They obviously have gotten a lot of traction within social media and within the diaspora. But it's yet to be seen if they've got the same traction within the people locally in the villages, the same traction that they got with the name of MDC Alliance. Are they going to get it with the new party, CCC? So also the key point I wanted to make here is, if you look at what Zito Kabwe did with the Mining Act, he was protecting the local interest. But if you look at Chamisa, most of his approach is, let's look outside. He's looking outside for solutions. Whereas people like Zito Kabwe, they look internally for solutions. The Mining Act is a typical example. Give local people rights. Remove these big multinational companies from mining, small scale mining or surface mining. They removed all that, and the locals were able to get all these benefits, mining rights, because of the work of an opposition politician. Whereas the opposition politicians in Zimbabwe, they're almost competing to be the darlings of the West or the favorite of foreign countries. They focus too much on foreign stakeholders, whereas the local stakeholders are there. And then to conclude, I think the path to State House for Chamisa, he does not understand it. You heard him, he keeps repeating that the older people must go and the young people must get in. I think he's going to find it very, very difficult, because just being young is not a right, does not give you a right to go to State House. And just being young does not mean that you've got the right ideas. Look at Joe Biden. He's probably the oldest president on earth, if I'm not mistaken. He's very, very old. So age is not important anymore. Things have changed. What Chamisa needs to understand, and I always said this, is you cannot take over a system that you're not part of. So I think I should say this every day. If there is a system as big as ZANU-PF, and you think you can take over, the first thing that you have to do is to be on the table with ZANU-PF. You cannot be away from the table. You cannot be sitting and commentating from a distance, because if you do that, they will not allow you in. And this is what is happening. What Chamisa needs to do, he needs to get into bodies like Pollard. I know Pollard right now is probably non-functional. It's not working. But if Pollard was functional, this is the place that Chamisa would need to go. He would need to go into Pollard. He would need to get himself into some form of arrangement with the ZANU-PF government, especially after the 2023 elections, or even before the 2023 elections. Chamisa will have to go in there and have some sort of arrangement with them. Because as long as he's outside, he's talking from outside, he's not going to succeed. So internal dialogue is going to become a key aspect going forward. There is no way that Chamisa can take over. Firstly, he does not have the numbers. Chamisa does not have national support. And guys need to understand this, especially the supporters. The numbers are not there. You don't have the numbers. Mashona in the east, Mashona in the west, Mataveli in the south, Mataveli in the north, Masvingo, Midlands, all these places. You don't have the support. The support that Chamisa had was in the town. And if ZANU-PF does well and they put their people out, they are going to win in those areas. Just mark my word. If ZANU-PF was very, very organized and they got their people out, they'll win. So Chamisa is in a very, very tight spot, and he still believes what happened in the past. He still believes that he won the election, whereas he did not win the election. And that is a very, very big and bad situation that Chamisa finds himself in. Let me see if I left anything here. I want to look at the issue of foreign observers. When foreign observers declare an election free and fair, it becomes problematic for Chamisa when he says the elections in Zimbabwe are not free and fair, and the issue is with ZEC. What happens is that if you have issues in the political party, you have a division, like what you have in the MDCT, MDC Alliance, MDC Coupe, and so on, it gives ZEC a difficult time, but it also gives the opponents a chance to manipulate the situation. So first, if Chamisa's party was organized and united and people were registering, everything would be okay. But those things are not in place. So this is the problem that we have. And these are the facts. These are the facts. Chamisa went to Tanzania. He gave a speech, and the speech was not convincing. And he showed his weaknesses, especially this continuous insistence that he won the 2018 election. Someone needs to tell Chamisa that that is an old song. It has been sung for too long, and he needs to stop. He needs to move on, because it's making him lazy. I'm always telling people that this is making Chamisa lazy to say, I won the elections in 2018. Because if he loses in 2023, he's going to want to say, I won the election the same way I won in 2018. I won and I was rigged. But I think the ball in ZANU-PF's court. They need to make sure that they get their people out. And this time they mustn't win by a small margin of 2 or 3%. They must do what Chama Pinduzi is doing in Tanzania. 8 million votes. Chadema, 4.7 million votes. CUF, 1.29. And then the party that Chamisa visited, X Mazalando, with 324,000 votes only, which is 2% of the vote. So Chamisa basically went to address a party that has got 2% of the support in Tanzania. People did not even know what was happening. They were not even concerned that Chamisa was there. I wish he had gone and visited Chadema, the old party of Sito Kabwe. Right, I want to wrap this up here. I'm having load shedding here in South Africa. It's become very bad over the past week. So I'm unable most of the time to go live at 9 p.m. because they load shed from 8 p.m. So what I will do is, when it's possible this week, I'm going to come and do some lives. We want to look at Thokozani Coupe tomorrow. I think we should do that. She's her court cases. The judges had them last week. So let's give you an update on that. I also want to give you an update on her new slogan. Very interesting. She's now working very, very closely with Chamisa. So let's see where that goes. Thokozani Coupe, Nelson Chamisa, that combination. And she's now on a direct collision course with ZANU-PF. Let's see how that goes. Thokozani Coupe, she has decided that she would rather go with Chamisa and she will go hard. So that's what she's doing. Let's see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as time goes on to Coupe and her closest allies. Now, I want to bring this to a close. Let's see if we can replay that clip from Chamisa. So firstly, let's see the pictures there. You can see this is Chamisa with the ACT Wazalendo leaders there. On his right, that's Zito Kabwe. And you can see that he's deliberately not putting Fadzai Mahere in the pictures there. I could only see, okay, there she is. There's Mahere on the left, wearing a long skirt. I think she in Tanzania, the Muslim country. So she was trying to comply. I don't know if I like this outfit. I don't like it. Let's play the speech by Chamisa. Let's go out of that speech where he's saying a lot, which I think exposed a lot of his weaknesses.
It's only in this continent where results are impregnated and produce a different child. It's only in Africa. We won the election. The problem in Africa is that the elders do not want to go to give the young ones the opportunity. Look at what is happening in Uganda. My brother Museveni, it's time to go. Leave young people to go forward. Yes, you have done very well, but you must be succeeded. No leader must stay forever. When you stay forever, you start stinking. You start becoming a burden. You start causing problems. Leaders come and leaders lead and leave. In Zimbabwe, we have had one man, President Mugabe, succeeding himself successively. Of course, we respect him for what he contributed, and may his soul rest in peace. In Africa, we honor our elders. He's our dear departed father. But we must all allow leaders to come and... Now, I have a big problem around elections in Africa. Elections in Africa are always contested. Do you know why? Registrar of parties. Because if you are not fair as a referee, you throw away the whistle, you join the other team. People begin to treat you with suspicion. That is what has caused problems on the African continent. You know that we go into elections, but elections produce contested results. Why? The rules are not agreed upon. In our own situation in Zimbabwe, I told you that we won elections. We are going to win again. Zimbabwe has elections next year. And I can tell you, we'll be inviting you to Zimbabwe. CCC is the next Zimbabwean government. Come, 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 come. It's a new dawn in Zimbabwe. There's a wave in the region. It was in Malawi. It went to Zambia. Now it's just peeping over, about to cross into Zimbabwe. And we are ready to welcome this. A great visitor called democracy. A great visitor.
Uyo uko kuno abo bano mamuona kere nai anovura meso anovura ntebe anokaya marigi kama kwetu tikom kwetu tikom usasai kama kwe anokaya marigi
kama kwe uyo anotara mari anogaya mari garai mamunzwa pane nyaya pano zvamunoda kunzwa zvinotaurwa pano madiko kumunzwa mugovane.com gambakwe vanogaya mari vanotaura mari vanosiya mari gambakwe vanotaura feya kuti pamberi zvichafamba sei vanomuterere zvikubatsirei mukufamba kwenyu zvikubatsirei mirai ndikudze kuti chokwadi pano chizere gambakwe vanogaya cash vanopa mafacts vanotaura straight vane evidence vane confidence plus intelligence
Entertainment, current affairs and news. Gambakwe.com. Usasarire, Gambakwe anukaya mari. Mari. Gambakwe.